The fire beneath the mountain. There once lived a man named Zafir in a forgotten village carved into the cliffs of the ancient East. His hands were skilled in weaving silks, his voice soft, his eyes dimmed with something like sleep. For years, Zafir lived as the villagers did, rising at dawn, working by rote, folding the same patterns into the cloth, eating from the same bowls, and speaking only of safe, familiar things. But every night as sleep brushed over the earth, Zafir would hear a distant sound, like wind through stone, or the voice of the mountain calling his name. It began as a whisper, but over time it grew bolder. "Zafir," it said, "remember who you are." He told no one. He feared the madness of it, but in truth he feared something deeper, the feeling that he had once been more than this quiet repetition of days, that somewhere beneath the still surface of his life was a flame forgotten. One evening under a sky choked with stars, the whisper became a command. "Come." He left without farewell, with only a water skin, a walking stick, and the talisman his mother had given him long ago, a shard of obsidian bound in copper wire. Zafir turned his feet toward the dark slopes of the mountain that loomed over the valley like a buried god. The villagers said no man returned from the mountain, that it devoured the soul, but Zafir was already half consumed. As he climbed, the air thickened with ash. The trees thinned, twisted by winds that carried the scent of fire. Dreams plagued his sleep, visions of a mirror that showed not his face, but the eyes of a beast. And each night the voice grew closer, until he could feel it inside him, not words, but a knowing. At the mouth of the mountain's cave, Zafir paused. Shadows writhed within, and from its depths came the breathing of something vast and ancient. He stepped inside. The darkness was total, the silence crushing. He walked for what felt like days, through stone corridors that shimmered with memories, scenes from his past flashing like lightning on wet stone. His father's silence, the shame of failure, the years spent diminishing himself to survive. At last he reached a chamber. A fire burned at its center, not wild but steady. Before it stood a figure cloaked in flame. It bore no face, only a molten mask that changed with every blink, sometimes a lion, sometimes a weeping child, sometimes Zafir himself. "Who are you?" Zafir whispered. The figure raised a hand, and the chamber echoed, not with words, but with the weight of truth. "I am what you buried." Zafir fell to his knees. He wanted to flee, but his legs would not move. The figure came closer, and the fire passed over him, not burning, but revealing. His skin peeled like old bark, and beneath it he saw his fear, raw, snarling, begging to be hidden. "You feared your own power," the figure said now with his voice. "You feared that if you chose yourself, you would be alone, that to shine would make others turn away. So you dimmed, and called it humility." Zafir wept. But the tears were not grief, they were release, and as they fell into the fire, the flame grew. "Stand," the figure said. Zafir rose, the mask of the being melted, and there was no longer a figure before him, but a great mirror of obsidian. In it he saw not his body, but his essence, limitless, fierce, and radiant like the stars before the first dawn. He touched the mirror, and it dissolved into light. When he emerged from the mountain, the sky was aflame with morning. Birds scattered before him, the wind bowed, and the stones beneath his feet felt alive. His posture was different, rooted, commanding. The same man, yet entirely transformed. He returned to the village, but not to stay. People stared, some feared, others wept without knowing why. He no longer walked in the rhythm of the old world. He carved new paths, spoke truths without apology, created with the heat of his soul, and everywhere he went, he lit the fire in others. Not with sermons, just by being. For he had faced the terror of forgetting himself, and in the furnace of that fear, he had forged something unbreakable. His self, whole, uncompromised, awake, and the world at last recognized him.